Hello, Internet! It's Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. Joining me, as always, for our bi-weekly video game book club, we have Billy the Math Magician Rothert.
Well, at least I can live with that. It's a little bit better than Grindfather, and at least not being called like a mass murderer or like a blood sport Rothert again.
Van Damme
Even
stuff.
though after this podcast, you might call me Bloodsport again.
Bloodsport. No, you said you're the Math Magician. You're known that far and wide, so I feel like I should actually.
I wasn't
let
lying.
People know because we do have listeners in foreign countries. Oddly enough.
Excellent.
And we also have Peter Weird Animal Facts Busby.
Not only are lobsters immortal, but certain jellyfish are as well. They can reverse their life cycle, conceivably live forever.
What does that even mean? What do you
If
mean
only
reverse
they
their life
thought
cycle?
to do that.
They reverse to their polyp stage, and then they grow up again, and then reverse again, and then grow up again. Did you know octopi can squeeze through any hole the size of their beak? That's the limiting factor. They can squeeze the rest of their body through no problem.
Octopus has a beak?
Yeah, they have beaks.
Like sharp ones.
What?
Yeah.
So if you couldn't tell, we're going to be talking about Tomb Raider today. Tomb Raider, the 2013 reboot of Tomb Raider, not the PlayStation 1 version. So we're talking about this today because Billy wanted to bring it up. As always, if you have any comments or feedback for the show or suggestions, you can hit it up at thatpinguino@gmail.com. At thatpinguino on Twitter and thatpinguino@gmail.com.
You need to get better at this plug stuff.
Okay, you do it then if you're so good, Mr. Math Magician.
I mean, I'm talking about learning your own fucking name and your own social media.
You sort of confused your own email address there.
Okay, it's at that Pinguino on Twitter, right? There's one. If you want to reach out to the show and comment, and then if for some reason you don't want to do that in the public, you can also send an email to thatpinguino@gmail.com. We also post this on several other places like giantbomb.com and our own RSS feed podcast hosting site. You can reach at deeplistens.libsyn.com.
And rate and review on iTunes.
Yes, rate and review on iTunes. So if there was a comment or feedback, we would be talking about it here. But since it's not, I'm asking you to send some. You nebulous listener. So without further ado, Tomb Raider. Billy, you brought this up. You made us do this. You explained why.
All right. Hang on a second. This was an awesome game.
It was a good game.
It was.
So let's talk about Tomb Raider a little bit just as a franchise, just for a few minutes. This is an iconic video game franchise with an iconic character, Lara Croft, the daring, capable, driven, mysterious, sexy adventurer lady, right? And that's the character that we've grown to know and love over decades of games. And I mean, there's probably 12 or 15, maybe I'm blowing that out of proportion a little bit, but there's at least 10 Tomb Raider games.
There are a lot. I'm confused. What?
2 movies?
There's multiple movies.
Yeah, there are multiple films.
Angelina Jolie was in there for a little bit.
She was.
So we have come to understand what a Tomb Raider game is about. It's about this particular character, Lara Croft, and I listed some of her characteristics. And the gameplay, the style of gameplay, is very much action-adventure, platforming, puzzle-solving, world exploring, and they sort of kind of made their own mold of game. Tomb Raider games kind of had their own little niche. I mean, there were other games similar to it in nature, but Tomb Raider had a brand. Mm-hmm. And I have played Tomb Raider 1, the original, Tomb Raider 3. Those are all fantastic games. I think Tomb Raider 3 is one of the best ones in the series. I think most of the fans will also agree Tomb Raider 3 is one of the top ones up there. It's when we get the real Lara Croft experience as opposed to just Lara wasn't really developed that much in Tomb Raider 1 a little bit, but she, we really get the Lara Croft we know in games like Tomb Raider 3 and beyond.
Okay.
So, why did they need a reboot? That's kind of what I want to talk about today.
Do you want the practical answer?
Sure.
Because the game stopped selling, and
Stack
so
that paper.
They wanted to reboot it because the games had lost focus. Games like Uncharted had come out and ate Tomb Raider's lunch.
I'm glad
bad.
you brought up Uncharted
because this game is basically Uncharted.
Well, now see, let's just go ahead and jump right in. Like, I think that if I think the developer was like Eidos or whatever it's called.
This one's Crystal D. It's Crystal Dynamics.
Yeah, but Tomb Raider 1.
Oh, yes. It was an Eidos game. Yeah.
If they had the capabilities and the resources and the technological advancements to make an Uncharted game, they probably would have made the first Tomb Raider like an Uncharted game.
Yep. I think so.
They were limited only in the reaches of their technology, not their imagination, right? So the fact that this Tomb Raider reboot feels like emulates, models, whatever word you want to use, it reminds us of an Uncharted type game, is because original Tomb Raider 1 would have loved to have been an Uncharted game way before Uncharted came out.
Yeah.
And so now I think is the perfect time. When I say now, I mean 2013, when it was like when it was like new generation of gaming. That was the perfect time for them to say, hey, let's make Tomb Raider what it should have always been.
I don't know. It seems like it's too late at this point now, though.
What do you mean?
Like it would have been the perfect time to make an Uncharted game before there was an Uncharted game. But now that there is, I mean, just play Uncharted.
Well, I think that so there's the twofold. There's kind of a reimagining of what the gameplay would be. This game is a lot more action set piece focused. There's a little bit more open world exploration. Kind of here's a combat tool and a world and a navigation tool wrapped in one usually, and kind of go explore, go enjoy this sandbox full of posters and things. And that's happening on the one hand, the gameplay is being changed, but also they're attempting to redo a lot of Lara Croft's backstory and make her a grounded. They really want her to be a grounded, emotionally resonant character instead of kind of a caricature with 2 pistols and booty shorts who's just kind of getting hers. Lara Croft, to my understanding of the early games, did not have much of a personality beyond get mine, I also wear booty shorts and I have 2 pistols. Whereas this game tries to have some sort of emotional grounding for her. I don't think it succeeds, but it seems to be trying. And those are 2 rebrandings. The gameplay is rebranded and the characters involved are kind of rebranded as well. And so that's, I think, why they just said, this is Tomb Raider. It's not, The Tomb Raider or Tomb Raider 2013 or Tomb Raider 7 or something. This is supposed to be, hey, all those old games, throw them out. This is the new baseline. We're going to move forward from here. This Laura has like realistic proportions. She's supposed to have a more realistic character arc as well. Billy, your mic is off.
All right, I agree a little bit that okay, so let me actually back up for one second. I want to push back and say that they're not trying to throw out the entire canon before this Tomb Raider game. This is just an opportunity for them to take the same character that we've had and maybe redesign everything else around her. Instead of just saying, hey, all those games that happened before, disregard them from this point forward. It's still the same, I guess, skeletal structure. And let me bring kind of an example, right? I don't know how familiar you guys are with like Marvel DC comic history, but DC Comics had to like very hard like revamp their universe because characters like Flash and Superman, specifically Flash and Superman, those 2, and to some extent Wonder Woman, the way they scaled up their powers got so absurd that it just broke the universe. And they're like, oh shit, we have to dial this back a little bit, and we can't make them just be insanely no limits powerful because it doesn't work anymore. So there's like a hard line. I don't know exactly when it is, but someone who's like a comic book buff bigger than I am would be able to say, oh, like on this date, they like re-released Superman and they reined in his abilities, but they don't throw out the entire canon before that and just say disregard it. They just say, hey, that was early Superman, pre this, whatever, and then the creators redesigned his image a little bit, and now
yeah, but I'm not saying
a god.
I'm not saying that like those old games, literally burn them. They're useless to you. I'm saying that going forward, that is no longer going to be the framing. This Lara Croft
now
is a
I'm with
different
you.
Lara Croft.
But you actually did say, like, burn it to the ground, like, 5 minutes ago.
I said that's not what we're using as a point of reference anymore. That is not what Lara Croft is. She still, that existed. That was cool and all. It gave us the inspiration. But this is a hard reset. This is
now we're on the same page.
And, like, yeah. And oddly enough, for trying to make Lara Croft more grounded, she is as overpowered, as superpowered in this game as she has ever been.
We are going to talk about that too. So let me intro a little bit of the story, like what's going on in this Lara Croft game.
She just got out of grad school.
Right. She just finishes. It was archaeology.
Can only hope my life's that sweet when I'm right out of grad school.
Yeah, you go on a boat and you go chasing Yamatai, and then
they were on an expedition or adventure, excursion, whatever you want to call it, to try to research or study this kingdom, this lost kingdom of Yamatai, which is basically like an East Asian version of Atlantis, like Lost City of Atlantis. If I remember the story correctly, it wasn't actually like Laura's idea. She was along for the ride, with Dr. Whitman being the lead archaeologist. So it was kind of his show. And even one of the characters, Sam, was doing his show. Yeah, was doing like a documentary or like a TV series about him. Right? So Laura was just kind of along for the ride as, I guess, like the second lead archaeologist, not really the main show. So that's sort of what the scenario is from the very beginning of the game, like opening scenes. Mm-hmm. The boat hits a storm, crashes on this island. We don't know where they are, but all of a sudden they're thrown into this sort of castaway survivor scenario. And it turns out they suspect that the island that they've stumbled upon is the island of Yamatai. Why is this important? Yamatai is an ancient Chinese or Japanese, I can't remember. Japanese, right? Ancient Japanese civilization or culture or island where there was an incredibly powerful queen who was said to have these like mystical powers. She could control the storms or whatever. So they're trying to find relics from that time or evidence of this civilization. That's why they're doing this. So you get crash landed on this island. Turns out it's Yamatai.
Yep. Turns out it's Yamatai. Turns out all the legends were true.
Yeah. Mystical shit happens. There are storms that won't let anybody leave. So any rescue boats try to leave, lightning just strikes them and they get destroyed. It's like a ship graveyard surrounding the island.
There are ghost samurai, too.
There are ghost samurai.
Ghost skeleton zombie? It's
zombie
unclear.
Samurai. Undead samurai.
They're all of the things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's like the framework. Why are we here? Why are we playing this game?
Yep. And it's important to note this is supposed to be the moment when Lara Croft stops being Lara Croft, grad student archaeologist, and starts being the Tomb Raider.
The Tomb Raider.
The Raider of Tombs.
It is an origin story.
So this is her origin story. This is her Peter Parker getting bitten by a spider. This is her Superman being born and then shot to Earth. This is supposed to be that story for her. And so I guess, should we start talking about the story and some of how we felt about it?
Let's go. I mean, well, you have an issue with the story and how it relates to its mechanics. So we can probably jump into that a little bit if you want.
Yeah, so first, I just want to talk about the characters a little bit.
Go ahead.
So there's Laura and... Oh, Alex sucks. Everyone sucks. But there's Laura, there's Alex, who is a nerd. That is his character trait. That's pretty
He's the ship technician.
Yeah, he's a hacker. You can tell because he has a shirt that says it's the escape key, and he's got a tattoo with the molecule for caffeine on his neck, and he wears glasses. So he's a nerd. You can tell that. And then there's the rest of the crew. Let's see. What are all these names?
Jonah Maleva.
Rias, Jonah.
Yep.
There's
the old dude?
Grim.
Yep,
I
Grim,
think his name's Grim.
The Scottish guy. So there's Jonah, who is
He's
the spiritual guy.
Yep.
Who is, I guess, from New Zealand.
He's
got a rugby shirt, but he's supposed to be like an amalgam of every sort of kind of native tribe, kind of.
Born in New Zealand, raised in Hawaii.
Is he raised in Hawaii?
Like so Samoan.
Maui?
Yeah, he seems kind of Samoan to me.
I know, he seems like he could be Native American,
right, like
Aboriginal.
He's an Islander guy.
He's any kind of native.
Spiritually inclined.
He's got a deer shirt. He's got a tribal tattoo. He's got hair pulled back in a ponytail. He's kind of thick, so he's probably Samoan.
Very strong.
He's the spiritual guy, and Alex is the tech guy. And then there's her
friend Sam.
Her friend Sam, who is constantly kidnapped.
Flighty.
Reyes. There's Reyes.
Reyes is Reyes.
Reyes. I think it's
Reyes. I think it's
Reyes?
Reyes, but because Laura is British, she pronounces it Reyes. But she is the
mechanic.
She's the mechanic. Oh, that scene. I'm gonna have to talk to you about the scene where you go get her tools. But then
and all you bring back is like a screwdriver.
A screwdriver and a wrench. Oh, but we could talk about that a little later. There's her mentor,
Dr. Whitman.
No, not
Roth.
Dr. Whitman. Roth. There's Roth, her British mentor, who's kind of Alan Quatermain-y. Yeah. Like he always saw the potential in her, and he's the captain of the Endurance, her ship, and so he agrees with her gut, and when they go to Yamatai,
and look how it works out for him.
There's the doctor, who is squirrely as hell immediately and not to be trusted.
Very clear from
Dr. Whitman, yeah.
Dr. Whitman. And then there's Grimm, who is Scottish, and that is his character trait. He's kind of crotchety.
Glasgow.
Yeah.
I'm from Glasgow.
Wait. Does that make him Scottish or Irish? That is Scottish, right? American.
Scotland, yeah.
Okay, great. So, great. That would have been embarrassing. Okay, so those are all the characters, but all of them are super duper boilerplate.
Yeah.
Like
What's that mean?
The worst.
Boilerplate.
They're one dimensional.
They're super one dimensional.
Cutouts.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And I feel like that's a side effect of video game writing in a way, because none of them are allowed screen time. They're not allowed to talk about anything other than advancing the plot. Outside of occasionally you will get a journal entry from some of these characters, and like the only character development Alex really gets is when you find journal entries from Alex.
God, dude, his whole like friend zone character arc drove me nuts.
Yeah, it drove me nuts as well. But so many of these characters are defined by how they look, because they have like maybe 10 lines, 20, 30 lines that are not, go shoot that thing. Hey, Laura, we need help. Laura, be careful. Laura, you're going to shoot that guy? And boilerplate dialogue like that. And so when you have these characters who only outside of the first cutscene maybe get to talk about their own feelings and emotions and their motivations like once or twice the entire game, you kind of have to rely on them being caricatures, because you're not going to give them the time to be anything else. And so that's how you end up with Alex having glasses and a caffeine tattoo and an escape t-shirt, and how you end up with what's his name? Jonah having a Buck rugby shirt and a tribal tattoo, and how he looks. Like, all of them need to convey everything about that character visually, because they're not going to say very much. And then when they say things, it has to reinforce how they look visually. And it kind of backs you into a corner as a writer, because you can't really make these characters grow, because you're not given the resources to write them any deeper than that.
Do you think it's an extension of sort of the fundamental conceit they chose to open the game with? Like, just in virtue of picking a ship, they now have to staff the entirety of a ship's crew. And the more characters you get, necessarily, the less screen time these individuals get. Maybe it would have been better if her and Roth just sort of rode to the island themselves,
Or maybe they were the only ones that survived.
Right, something like that.
Or if you're going to center this story around Laura and how she's growing, maybe don't split the part. The thing is, the gameplay that they selected was very much Uncharted. You're climbing up these different edifices. You are shooting people all the time, and you're finding occasionally some things in the side. But a lot of that stuff necessitates Laura being alone, because you can't be waiting for people to catch up with you or to help you in combat. And you want to be doing really dynamic things like climbing. You don't want other people necessarily around. It's supposed to be this kind of lone story of a survivor. And so when you do that, you can't really have this ensemble cast grow and develop naturally like you would in like an RPG or something, which is necessarily structured around a party. So because they chose this gameplay style, I think that it really handicapped their ability to develop any character other than Lara, and also Lara, because she 9 times out of 10 is just
responding to their needs, basically.
Getting directed from place to place.
The majority of the characters were just meant to get to the point where they can sacrifice themselves for Lara. That was the main reason for half the characters existing in the first place.
Yeah, it is.
By the third one, it loses its punch just a little bit.
Yeah, like as soon as Roth was giving her big life lessons about getting on with her life, I was like, this guy's eating a bullet. This guy, something's bad's happening to him because she needs to grow, and the only way to show growth is by killing everyone she loves.
Like literally everyone, though. They all died.
No, they didn't all die.
For Jonah,
except
Reyes, and Sam.
Jonah survives?
Yeah.
Jonah
thought Jonah died. Well, he was willing to sacrifice himself.
So Roth dies, Alex dies, Whitman dies, but
Grim dies.
Grim dies,
yeah. Grim went out the best, though.
Yeah, he did.
You can't tell me that Grim's death wasn't like nice. Like that was an awesome death.
Yeah, it was heroic, but so was Roth with his dual pistols like going down blazing, and then Alex
trying to pick up.
Alex just kind of died. Alex sucked. I hated Alex.
I don't know why you guys hated him so much.
Because he's like the least fucking common to not like. If you could think of a lazy gamer stereotype to like appeal to the stereotypical audience, Alex would be it.
Yeah.
I really can't fight you on that.
He's really smart, but he's lazy, so he just skates by. Like, fuck Alex.
Gets friend zoned.
Right.
And he says it as the friend zone. And he's like, oh, this plight of mine, I'm going to go and I'm going to do something really big and drastic, and then maybe Laura will like me because she's too cool to like me for any other reason.
What a piece of shit.
And he goes out the work.
I'm glad he's dead.
Okay, how... Can we talk about the plot
something else
now?
we can talk about something else now.
They're real one-dimensional. I think Laura... And it's because this is all in service of Laura's story. This is supposed to be Laura's story.
Absolutely.
All these characters kind of don't matter to the story. However, the way that they try to characterize Lara becoming a survivor and becoming competent is by beating the hell out of her. Yeah. Just over and over and over again. And this is a criticism that I've read in almost every review of this game. But I guess I'll echo it now. The game starts by dropping a bone through her side.
Yeah.
And then it gets worse.
Like, she falls from a high place and lands on a spur of bone.
On a human like femur.
And that's like the over.
No, it's like it's like less. It's not even finger diameter.
It's all the way impaled though. It's all the way
through the fleshy part of the side.
Okay. That's a lot of blood.
So she gets stabbed through the side. Okay, here's the horrible events that I kept track of. She gets stabbed through the side. She gets her leg trapped in a bear trap.
Yep.
She falls from the top of a 20. She has like a 20-foot drop in the throne chamber. She falls from a tree, and I think those are the biggest ones. And then every time you die, she gets impaled or concussed or something terrible. Her throat windpipe ripped out by dogs. Like all of the death animations are super duper grim and gruesome.
That was a major criticism because those death animations, though they were not explicitly made to be provocative, some people said this could be construed as like a sexualization of her death animations, so it was not received well.
Yeah, she moans really weirdly when she dies. But it's mostly like, if this is supposed to be a power fantasy, like, my main problem is this game does not know whether it wants to be a power fantasy or the tale of a gritty survivor who's just trying to get by. And the moments where she is just beaten to hell, and then there'll be a few seconds where she'll be kind of like staggering and she won't be able to control properly, and maybe you can only use a gun with one hand or something because she's grabbing her side because of the impaling. But that's happening, and then she'll take like a nap, and then she'll just be okay. And I understand for gameplay purposes why that happens, because you don't want to control someone who's staggering around.
For the whole game, right?
For the whole game. But if you have this moment when we're supposed to care, and the story is supposed to be meaningful, and this is her survivor story, you can't have her get impaled, caught in a bear trap, fall from a giant building, fall from a tree, and say that matters for 5 seconds.
She does take like glancing gunshot wounds and stuff too. Like you'll see her arms get bandaged up and stuff. Like she takes some hits in cinematics.
But then outside of cinematics, none of it matters because when she's getting shot at, she is lethal. She is effective. Yeah. She goes from killing a deer and having problems with killing a deer to killing dudes like
just headshots, man.
It's just headshots, and she just does not care. She is just going through their pockets. She rifles through their pockets in like 2 seconds per body. And eventually she'll like unlock skills to get through their pockets even better.
All right, look. You said a lot of stuff, and I want to push back a little bit. There's 2 points now. First point that I want to push back on is the recovery from staggering and then why she staggers and stuff and all that stuff. I want to defend the game a little bit on that. And then I also want to talk about, and you and I talked about this earlier too, the transition from being, I guess, assuming she's never killed anybody before this trip to having killing people now. Okay, so you have problems with both those things. I'll address your first point. When we see her in certain cinematics or certain parts of the game, she takes damage or she's injured in some way. Either she's got a hole in her side from where she got stabbed by a bone, or she, like her legs messed up because she got caught in a bear trap. She has to get some bandages to fix it up. I have a problem with games that don't do stuff like that, because if you think about a game, let's take a game, I'm just going to throw one out there that would fit this model pretty well. Let's take like GoldenEye 007 from back in the day, right? In game, you see James Bond's character take damage as you're playing, and nothing happens. If you were to play the game in third-person perspective, your little James Bond model would be just, jogging along, and you'd be taking bullets through the side, and you would not, your momentum wouldn't even change. You would just not flinch at all, right? The only indicator that you've taken damage is like the screen kind of flashes red. That's it. And I think that's
Call of Duty jelly that they put on the screen.
Whatever. I think that's terrible on one end of the spectrum. It's like the extreme on one end of the spectrum. That's like a really bad way to show characters interacting with how they take damage or how they're not immortal, right? And maybe here in this Tomb Raider reboot, maybe they took it maybe like one step too far with how, she can magically heal herself after resting at a camp. But I would much rather them actually show the character be affected by taking damage, even if it's just in cinematic format, or like a small piece of the gameplay. I'd much rather them do that than nothing, right?
I'm not disagreeing with that. My thing is, so I played Uncharted 2.
So you're saying you agree with me?
No. I'm saying that's not my criticism.
Okay.
Uncharted 2, for example, one of the main conceits with that game is that Nathan Drake isn't taking bullets. They're missing. He is lucky. So when he's taking bullets and the screen is getting black, he's not actually taking damage.
He's running out of luck.
He's running out of luck.
Yeah, they actually were pretty forthcoming and said like this is what is happening. We're painting it this way.
This is our conceit. So when he gets shot in a cinematic, it happens in Uncharted 2. That is the only time he gets shot. Actually shot. All the other bullets are supposedly it's
narrow
suspension
misses.
of disbelief. Complete suspension of disbelief. It's completely unbelievable, but at least they're saying these are not actually bullet wounds that he's taking. Anytime he actually gets shot, he dies. This bullet wound that happens in this cinematic really matters because every other time he's not actually getting shot. And when he gets shot, he starts bleeding, and the next entire segment, you are fighting wounded, so you're kind of staggering, you're not as mobile as normal. He then passes out and is unconscious for weeks on end, as far as you know, recovering. And so by the time he is functional again, it has been weeks have passed, and it is used as an opportunity for him to just kind of go completely fish out of water. And there's this really cool sequence of him in a village where people kind of nursed him back to health. And there is appropriate time for that wound to have healed. Same thing in like The Last of Us when Joel gets injured. There's a time frame where he is wounded and really seriously wounded, and Ellie has to take care of him. And that is given weight. His injury is supposed to matter. All the other times you can say like, yeah, that he's getting shot at other times and it doesn't really matter. But when the story says, okay, this wound is important, it gives respect to that wound. Tomb Raider, when she is wounded, the amount of time when she's supposed to feel it is like an hour, if that. And that's what bothers me. It's not that she gets hurt and she staggers. It's that if you frame this as like this whole sequence of events takes place over weeks or months, they're trapped on this island and they're surviving. If you gave it some duration, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Like, she actually has to bandage and recover. Like, maybe her team is working a little faster or working a little bit slower. They're exploring the island, and this is unfolding over time. I could understand her being a survivor a little bit more than in one night she is going from I've never killed anyone to I've killed hundreds of people.
Hang on, you just jumped tracks for a second. We're talking about the injury stuff.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. The injury stuff and the killing stuff, it is all time frame dependent. It is because they are trying to set this up as this boom, boom, boom action movie where the pacing has to be super tight and everything has to flow. If they just took some moments to breathe, I feel like it wouldn't be as
Would you have been okay? Would you have been okay if it was like a couple of days?
Yes, if she had spent a couple of days, if like the bandaging, if Roth, when he gets
all they really needed to do was
off,
say like 3 days later, and like a black that really would have been it.
That would have helped for me if it was 3 days later or after bandaging, or like when it's a camp, it's not just a fire, like they're actually taking care of her. She's in a bed. Something that says to me that time has passed and it was significant. Not like I go to get a health pack and then bring it to Roth, and even though he has an exposed bone, I put some bandages on it and now he's walking again. It feels like magic. And if they're trying to make it seem like this is this realistic situation where it's life and death, and then she's magically bandaging herself and healing after a nap. And that's what it's just. You can't tell me it's.
I don't know
like
what you want
gritty, It can't be this gritty survival situation and then also have magical healing stuff for story purposes. Like there are ways to pace this where it doesn't feel like magic. Pete, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think it's the original discussion we had before, where you just sort of the power fantasy is you put people in these survival situations and they're instantly ready to kill, right? And that's a problem inherent, not that big a deal if you don't start with that moment where she shoots that deer, right? When you start there, it sets a whole expectation throughout the whole thing.
Exactly.
Now, I'm going to make sort of a separate point here. We don't have to address it, but I feel like part of the reason is that they wanted to set up this sort of, and this is sort of a half-formed idea, but it's this weird fantasy of sort of like you as the male player guiding sort of a vulnerable woman through this moment. Like the power seems located in the player as opposed to Lara herself, initially at least. Now, I know this is a half-formed idea, but I felt a little strange about it at the beginning.
I mean, I guess I can understand that just because she seems like when the story needs her to be incapable of doing something, she is. But anytime I was in control, she seemed completely capable of doing whatever needed to be done. Mm-hmm. And it was that dichotomy. Like, in Uncharted games, you understand that it's supposed to be this action movie, and Nathan Drake is he's kind of a bad dude. He's killing people all over the place. It seems like he's done this before. He knows what he's doing. And you know that it's going to be a thrill ride the whole time. And he's just going to be hyper competent. It might not make a ton of sense, but that is the world that's the expectation that's set up.
It's the same way that like Jones. A James Bond gamer, and Indiana Jones are characters that are just hyper capable, can do anything. The situations always work out for them. They have all the training they need. And even a James Bond movie, right before he goes on his mission, what's his name? Q or somebody gives him just coincidentally the exact tools he needs to use on that particular mission every movie. Like, hey, look, I just invented this really cool watch. It has like a dispenser of like thermite gas so you can like, get out of a jail cell. Because I feel like when you go to Tijuana, you're just going to be in a jail cell in a few days.
Exactly. And then you start in this game with Lara being a grad student who's supposed to have had almost no field experience. Yeah. Like there's a moment where she has a axe, like that axe for climbing
pick, yeah,
and where she first gets her climbing pick, and Roth is like, you can do this, you can climb. She's like, I don't know, I don't really climb, I'm not really a climber. She's like, I think you can do it. And the next second the whole mechanic is unlocked. It's not like there's a moment where she's tutorialized and she's learning how to climb. She is immediately just sheer rock faces, just straight up. And I feel like there's these moments where it's supposed to be this big story moment, and she jumps from 0 to 100 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah. 0 to 100 real quick.
Oh my God.
Know yourself. Know your worth.
I'm going to jump in. And I'm going to jump in with some fairly inflammatory language.
Great.
Yeah, and I know I'm using this. It might not be applicable, but this is sort of as opposed to a sexualized vision, it's a violence-based vision of the Madonna whore dichotomy, right? Sort of the old fantasy of a man finding a woman who's both virginal but knows her way around the bedroom, to put it in sort of the most vulgar, unnuanced terms I possibly. Yeah, and I see this operating here.
We can forgive that for this analogy. Let's go.
Yeah, right. And I see it operating here, right? They want to have it both ways. They want to have a woman, a female protagonist who's both sort of vulnerable, who needs help, who needs this sort of father figure to guide her through, and at the same time, a badass adventurer scaling rock faces. And I think it's, along with the Madonna and the whore, a distinctly male fantasy.
I could see that. And I think there is a power there, and I think that it appeals to both. I've read enough women saying that they like the new Tomb Raider, and they like the way Lara is represented.
See how attractive to a female audience as well, sure.
She is built more realistically. There's no absurd body type mechanic here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's no, like, stereotypical cliche, I know I'm a sex object, so I'm going to hint at that in my gameplay. Like in Tomb Raider 1, she basically has these dialogues with these other like male mercenaries that are like, sexualized undertones throughout their adventures. Now, you guys have a critique, and I think it's a valid critique, but I don't think that the game ignores it or is oblivious to it, because and I think that the game addresses it in some ways, because Gino and Pete both, you guys made points about how, look, she was, she started immediately climbing these rock faces and she's like immediately capable. Okay, sure. But if you had made her bad at rock climbing, so that she had, like, I don't know, like, let's just throw out some figures, like maybe she had like a 30% like slip off the rock face for a few feet rate or something like that, that would just annoy the gamer after a while, right? Somebody would critique that as it being, oh, it's too artificial that she's bad at this. She needs to be, like, a little more competent. If I was doing this, I wouldn't be that bad my first time rock climbing. And here's how I think the game addresses it, right? They do put an upgrade in the game that makes you better at climbing, better at falling, better at okay, perfect example. If you fall off one of those cliff faces, she'll hit the ground and like kind of eat shit, right? But you can get an upgrade where she'll like get better at it. She'll like tuck and roll, and you'll have like momentum, and you'll be at like advantage in combat situations if you have to jump off of a ledge. So they address her getting better at this stuff over time. It is 0 to like 60 really quick. It's like 0 to competent really quick. But it's not 0 to mastery really quick.
But the thing, so maybe it's just I've seen rock climbers, and the idea of her with no harness and no anything, scaling up a sheer cliff, even if it's the crumbly rock or whatever the special rock is that she can climb up, with one pick and a hand and no supports of any other kind, that just seemed ridiculous. It's not that, I think that if maybe they angled it a little bit or made it so that the initial rock faces were not like 20 feet straight up, or changed the animation, like it was just little things where I'm just questioning, okay, is that something that someone with no prior experience could do? And there were some times where, like, okay, a bow shooting a deer, sure, I can believe that she could do that by herself. But I think if we are to assume that she's never rock climbed before at all, or very limited experience in tandem, the idea of solo climbing with just a pick seems a little bit far. And it's here and there. It's just nitpicks.
I think you are nitpicking a little bit, but I'm not really going to bust your balls about it. I mean, they are valid criticisms, and the only defense for the game is that I mean, if I was a developer, I'd be saying, "Hey, come on, guys! Like, we're making this like a movie, like an adventure. Like, suspend a little bit of disbelief. Let's just let it happen, guys. You know, the game is fun this way. So let's just play the game for it to be fun this way."
But then I'll say, if you're trying to also make me take your story super seriously and take her growth as a character super seriously, you need to also engage with that in your gameplay. You can't say, okay, when she needs to be like, I think the moment that really crystallized it for me was when she gets captured by evil cult leader guy, Matthias. When she gets captured, she's in a room, Matthias is preaching, and he's got Sam. And he's like, this woman, she's going to raise Himiko, and we're going to get off this island. And there's this room of Solari that are, cheering him on. And Lara drops in, and she's got a bow ready. And she's, like, ready to do this. And I'm like, is this going to be a cutscene, or am I going to get to play it? Because if it's a cutscene, she is going to get captured right now. If I get to play it, these dudes are all dead.
Okay.
If I get to play it, all of these characters have gone to the Stormtrooper Marksmanship Academy, apparently, because I don't know about you, I played on normal, and if I was more than 10 feet away from an enemy, they had maybe a 90% chance of missing me. It felt like unless I was point blank on a machine gun guy, I did not die at all. So in that room, when she's like up on a ledge, I'm thinking I can clear this entire room if I get to play. But since it's a cutscene, I have a feeling that she's going to get knocked in the head. Oh, there's another thing that happens to her. She gets beaten up and knocked unconscious in that sequence, and she gets captured. And so it's those moments where, like, that room full of dudes is actually probably as many dudes as I took out during one of the several enemy rushes that occur during the game earlier, kind of leading up to that point. And I feel like the moments where I'm in control, I don't have a problem with this many dudes. But because the story needs me to, I'm going to. And it's just knowing that flip is going to swap all the time that I don't know that I can take, like, the damage seriously. If she can shrug off bullets and actually take the bullets, or can shrug off like a bear trap grabbing her leg, then she's never going to be in danger. I don't have to take any of this danger seriously because there is no amount of damage that the game will treat as serious damage.
All right, let me just let me try to explain why this might happen in a game, right? We have to take control away from the player at some point, because if we're going to assume that Lara Croft is an inexperienced adventurer, she's going to make mistakes, right? How are you going to program some kind of gameplay experience where the way to advance a story is the player has to mess up? Like, how does that work? So, without taking it into a cinematic where we say, okay, Lara Croft has a goal. I know, expert game player, if you are in control here, you'll just body everybody in the room, but we need Lara to make a mistake here. How are you going to program a game to, like, a player to mess up?
There are some great examples. So I'm going to spoil the end of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. So if you don't want to hear the end of that,
Crisis Core? No.
Do you actually care?
No. I do.
I've never even heard of Final Fantasy Crisis Core.
Okay, so it's not that much of a spoiler because that game's a prequel to Final Fantasy VII, and you know what happens to the main character.
Yeah, fine.
So the main character is Zack. He's a side character in Final Fantasy VII. Soldier. He's only in there for a little bit. He's basically the character who inspires Cloud. But
more than inspires.
Yes, who Cloud thinks he is for like the entire game. Final Fantasy VII is weird, but the way that game ends, you know how that game's going to end because the ending of that game is actually shown in Final Fantasy VII. Zack, the main character, gets overwhelmed by enemy forces at the end of the game, and he gets killed, and that's how Cloud's story kind of begins. And so the way they handle that, up until that point, Zack is hyper competent. He is a soldier. He is super strong. He is shown to destroy, all sorts of enemies, and there's a suspension of disbelief problem here. He's hyper competent. He's supposed to have fought the main villain of Final Fantasy VII and come away not unscathed, but an equal. So how the heck is he going to lose a battle? And the way they do it is they put you against an army, literally an army, and they respawn infinitely. And at a certain point, your character, even if you're killing as many guys as you can, they keep respawning, and he eventually will lose just by the sheer numbers of it. You can fight as competently as you want. they make you understand that the odds were so insurmountable that even given his strength and competence, he could not do it. And so they don't take control away from you. It's actually in playing through the moment and experiencing that even with how well you built this character, how good you are at the game, how much control you're given, it's not enough. This moment is too great for you to fight through. And so I think that is an example of how you can build these kind of moments, not by stealing control away, but by stacking the deck so that no matter how good a player is, they can't stop the story from playing out the way you want it to.
So I like it when those things happen, and in fact, it happens in one of my favorite games, Eco. It happens too. There's a specific cinematic where you're on a bridge and you have to make a jump and the bridge is actually pulling away from you, and no matter how quickly you gain control or how perfectly you move, you're always like a pixel too far away and you fall, right? That stuff is possible. I mean, at this point, I feel like you're just asking for the world and more of the developers to have thought of every single thing. And I mean, maybe you're just setting the stakes unreasonably high for a team of game makers. Yeah, this is a AAA game, but they can't have gotten every single detail right.
So no, but I think that these are moments in games. So this is criticism. Like, I think this game is very good. I think Tomb Raider is very good. But these are game design lessons that I would like to see brought forward. And if my main criticism is that she, in the gameplay moments where I'm in control, is hyper competent and can take out entire squads, and yet when you take her into a cutscene, she is incredibly vulnerable. And there's a dissonance. There's a video game criticism saying ludonarrative dissonance. It's kind of, it sounds really hoity-toity. Basically, the gameplay elements of a game not agreeing with the narrative moments. And there's a problem with the saying itself because it's implying that those two things are separate in some way. So I don't completely agree with that term, but it's useful here. If you want the gameplay to say the same thing as the story, and if you want these two things to agree completely, don't take control away. Like, put her in that combat situation that I feel I would be able to handle and make her lose. Like, set it up so that she can't survive.
And I agree there. Like, that is something that can be done. I mean, I guess I'm just trying to defend the point that I made where it's hard for developers to make the player make the mistake. This is one of the ways they can get over that problem. Yes, they could do it in a Crisis Core way or an Eco way, or any of the other games where you're supposed to fail after a certain point, like nothing you can do will be enough. I mean, even if you were on one of those cinematics where she was like sliding down a rooftop and she had to make a jump, like some of those you're destined to fail. You can never can never succeed. I mean, in fact, in the very beginning of Tomb Raider, where you find Sam's pack and her radio and stuff and you're about to go find them, you try to make a jump for a ledge, no matter how good you do, you slip and fall. So it happens here. So I mean, I guess your point is becoming more and more valid as I'm thinking of other times in the game where they actually did this. Why didn't they just do it here? But
it's just they use it a lot of times to set up really dramatic set pieces. Like, oh no, your rope's giving out. What are you gonna do? And then there's a cutscene, and you kind of grab things, or you're sliding down a ledge, and then your rope, like you grab a branch and the branch breaks, even if you press the right button.
Right.
And so they'll funnel you down, and it's usually for these big action set pieces. But I think that if they just use that a little bit more for their story moments, maybe I would not have felt like there was this. Why there were these two Lara Crofts. There was this Lara Croft in the cutscenes, and then there was this Lara Croft that I controlled. The Lara Croft in the cutscenes couldn't bring herself to kill a deer, but the Lara Croft I control has unlockable axe kills that get more and more gruesome depending on how you play.
Now I want to talk about this. I want to move on from this cinematic, weak, strong Lara, whatever, and just get to the next point that you had, which was, like, Gino, basically you said, I don't believe that she can go from inexperienced to, like, so easily can kill hundreds of people. I mean, in this game, she kills hundreds of people.
She kills everybody.
Basically, every person that she sees that's not one of her, like, squad gets bodied right now.
Zombies bodied.
I have a problem with this.
Bodied.
I have a problem with this. You have a problem with this, but let me try to at least give some credit to the game makers here.
Yeah.
So we know what Lara Croft is in
she's the Tomb Raider.
Right in the previous games, right? She's hyper capable, no hesitation. If somebody comes at her the wrong way in a violent manner and she has to respond, death. Like
0 to 100
real quick. Okay. Now, here's another game that did this like badly, right? And I'm saying like Tomb Raider did it the right way, right? Let's think about a game like Other M, Metroid Other M. People don't like to talk about it because they say it was a bad game. I think it was a perfectly fine game, but their criticism was that Samus just couldn't do anything at all. She went from incompetent and not very strong to full potential, and it took the entire course of the game, and no one liked it. It was not believable at all.
Well,
everyone was like, Samus would never act this way. She would never ask for a man's permission to do anything. Like,
well, the main criticism there wasn't that it took her that long. It was that she had all of the powers to like handle these situations, but she was under jurisdiction. She was under rules to not use them. And so
I'm not even talking about that. I mean like when there was a person that she had to save, and she could have saved them, and then she just like mentally froze up because she just wasn't ready. Like, that shit doesn't happen to Samus, and it won't happen to Lara Croft because, like, even though, yeah, you are inexperienced, there comes a time when, like, you need to get shit done. And here's where I want to relate to myself a little bit. And this is probably going to get a little weird, but, I mean, if
we like it when it gets weird, math magician.
So, I'm thinking, like, put myself in Laura's shoes, right? I'm stranded on this island. I'm trying to find my friends, and she says, I'm hungry. Like, she gets to her camp, she's like freezing, wounded, she's doing okay, but not great, and she's like, I'm hungry. I need to find some food. So you get this first objective. Your first kill is going to be a deer. First of all, props to them for actually saying that game characters need to eat at some point.
And then immediately forgetting that.
Yeah, because I think in all the Legend of Zelda games I played, you barely get you get like Lon milk, and that's it.
You get potions.
And like potions.
But basically, then you need to play Brave Fencer Musashi, because he eats. He's got a health system.
At least in like Monster Hunter, you have meals before every hunt, right? So props to them for saying that she actually needs food, right? Because people have to eat. So her first kill, she's remorseful for killing the deer, right? Then a couple of scenes later, you are in a camp. You are in a situation where you are going to assumably die otherwise without, I mean, if you do not fight your way out of here, you are going to get killed. You're like tied up, restrained. They're shooting they are executing your ship members. They're like, Laura, run, save yourself. And a guy just like pops a guy in the head with a pistol. He's dead. And you have to escape, and you have to kill a couple people on your way out. That's believable to me. And if I was in that scenario, I would have no problem murdering somebody who would otherwise murder me.
Like we said, Bloodsport.
That's why you're probably going to call me Bloodsport at the end of this podcast. Like, if it is me or them, I will not hesitate. Have I ever killed somebody before? No, I have not.
Maybe.
Thank goodness.
You say no now.
But if I had to right now, if it was me versus somebody else, and only one of us gets to live, and there's no like heroic or like virtuous reason why I would let that person have their life over mine, they're going down.
That's fine, but they want to set Lara up as being vulnerable and being remorseful.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between being capable of killing other people and not caring that you killed dozens of other people.
That's
and
not true either, because she directly makes a very specific line in the game as she's climbing up a ladder. She gets a radio call from Roth. She explains her situation. She says, Roth, like, I was like, they were just killing people. Like, I had to kill some of them to get out. And he was like, I can't imagine that could have been easy for you. And she said, and this was her line. It's scary how easy it actually was for me to do that. The game addresses this weird situation that's happening, and they understand that they're doing something weird here. That is a line that she says in the game. It's scary how easy this was for me to do it.
But how do you reconcile that line with this extended scene of her watching, I forget which Russian guy it was, Boris or Vladimir, but watching him slowly bleed to death? Like there's a distinct, there's tonal shifts throughout.
It happens right after that. Like you have to go through like a series of QuickTime events to not get murdered by him, and it ends with you, luckily, getting one shot off that is lethal to this guy.
But you just watch him slowly die. He like gurgles in his own blood.
It's like a train wreck. You know, you can't look away from something like that. Now, here's a problem that I do have. I do have a problem with this accelerated capability. I think the weapons upgrade system here was kind of bonkers.
Yes.
You guys did not. I mean, I don't know if you guys maxed out your weapons, but there were 4 weapons in this game. There was the bow, a handgun, a rifle, and a shotgun. It seems like pretty standard, right? Like that's like a very standard mix of weapons. Face value, totally fine. But then like everything can have like a fire upgrade and like an explosive upgrade and like an armor piercing upgrade. Where are you gonna find this shit on a deserted island, right? You can literally have the bow itself. That'd be your only weapon because you can get like a fire arrow upgrade, armor piercing arrow upgrade. The last upgrade gives you bomb arrows. You get like grenade arrows. That shit's ridiculous. Oh, you can body any enemy in the game with the first weapon you get, which is the bow and arrow. That I don't believe. If I were the game makers, I would have wished that they had done something more creative with weapon upgrades.
It's made out of like PVC pipe and twine too. She's just shooting grenades with it.
Well, at first, and then she finds another bow and another bow, and then the last bow is like
she gets like real cool. An Olympic competition, like professional archer bow. Fucking that Jonah just like found around. Like, oh yeah, I found this bow for you. I was hanging on to it because I think you would like it. Little bird.
Oh, little bird.
Anyway, so look, if I was building the weapon system here, fine. Make it an upgradable, slow weapon system where she has to like craft together like different ways to make her weapons more efficient, but do it in a way that actually lends well to the scenario that they're in. Like, I don't believe that they're just an ample supply of grenades lying on the ground everywhere. And that brings me to something else. And we're going to talk about this in the second half of the podcast. We should probably take a break soon. But the amount of ammo on the ground was just ridiculous.
Yeah, it was lunacy. You never ran out of ammo.
I mean, I am shit at shooter games. I would just miss entire clips of the rifle, just like shooting at air. I'm so garbage at shooting games. And it didn't matter because after the fight, everybody had like 14 bullets on them, and like you're just good to go. Like you're refilled to the max after one fight.
Yeah, maybe that's just on normal, but that's how I played. I guess.
Oh no, I'll tell you all about easy, normal, and hard.
Yeah, and I think for story purposes, the notion, like if you're gonna suspend your disbelief that there's an upgrade system and that Lara could take these pieces of bolt and stuff, and then like cobble together an extended magazine and all that other stuff.
Sure.
Like, I guess I can buy it.
You find a silencer for your pistol.
I don't really know why she has to be that good. Doesn't she just have to be good enough to survive if she's supposed to be a survivor?
Yeah.
Does she need to be like hunting people for sport by the end of it? Like,
they drew first blood, Gino.
And it wasn't like, it's not even Rambo levels of remorse. It's not even that much. And it's just that I got through the game without getting all of the upgrades, but I didn't need them. I could have gotten through the game with just a bow with the regular arrows.
For the record,
it really wasn't that hard.
I actually 100%ed the game.
Weird.
First playthrough.
Who'd have thunk it? So I guess on that note, let's take a small break. When we come back, we'll be discussing a little bit more about, I guess, the upgrade system. And
I want to talk about easy mode, hard mode, normal mode, and like one other point. But we'll get all that good stuff.
And Pete, you had a point to make as well.
Yeah.
So we'll be back in a little bit. Thank you for listening. We will be back with more deep listens, the deepest of listens. All right, and we're back. So, Billy, we had some things in the break.
Yeah, okay. You guys had some emotions. about Alex and his mission, and like one or two more
mission.
plot holes.
His important mission, his life.
Why don't you
was
guys
worth his life.
just vent for 2 or 3 more minutes?
Hey Pete,
get it off your chest.
If you say, for example, we're fixing up a boat and you needed some specific important tools, and you were going to send someone alone into a ship infested with weird cultist mercenaries, what tools do you think they would be?
I can only think of 2 that I could possibly need.
Okay, and they're very specific because someone needed to go on this mission alone.
Obviously, one would be, that single screwdriver that you have.
A flathead.
Flathead, gotta be, right? You couldn't use a dime or a nickel, and it's gotta be. And then I think a wrench with that.
Oh, would it be like one of those adjustable wrenches that can work for multiple sizes of bolts?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, you mean just like a sheet of metal?
Yeah,
a sheet of metal.
Just to turn one single boat, turn the wrench. There. Finish.
Turn it real good. Okay.
Nice and tight.
So Alex, the tech guy, gets sent into a ship all on his lonesome to retrieve a flathead screwdriver and a wrench. And that is how he dies. He dies saying, Laura, take these tools back. Take them back to her. And he explodes himself.
So that Laura will finally notice him, in fucking simplest terms.
Oh, and you find his journal right by the campfire, and it's like, Laura, she's so cool, she's such a badass, but she's also she's real dainty, and I can't believe it. Maybe she'll finally notice me. I'll find the tools, and I'll get us home. Not to mention, how many other ships are shipwrecked there? None of them have a wrench or a screwdriver on it.
There are grenades everywhere. Grenades left and right, but there's only a single screwdriver on the whole island.
So I think it's important to mention one of the major collectible types is scrap. It is boxes full of nameless metal that we don't know what the heck it is, but it's apparently useful. And it can be turned into such things as magazines of bullets. It can be turned into extended barrels. It can be turned into vents. Anything you need.
You're basically 3D printing with scrap.
With bullets. And she can make a gun into whatever you want it to be. But to turn it into a flathead screwdriver and a wrench is beyond her powers.
Only Alex can save us.
Dr. Caffeine over there.
I'm not touching this. I have no defense for this game for that.
It's amazing. And not to mention how many piles of bodies and pools of blood exist on this island. How many? Because she falls into 4 or 5 piles of bones. Also, how is it that 3 women have been on this island ever, apparently?
Oh, I think that's actually an explanation for that. So I can probably defend that. So they have said before that other women had been on the island.
Just
because if you look at the walls and notice the markings that they've drawn on the walls, in the various Solari camps, it will they'll be drawing on the walls certain images and symbols, and if you look closely, it'll have a picture of a plane or a boat, and then it'll have X's over the people, and then it'll say oh, there was 13 men, 7 women, and then there's X's over them because they're all dead now.
Yeah, Matthias
they killed. Yeah, they either kill the guys or make them new Solari, and then they try to use these women for this ritual thing.
Yeah.
So there is a story explanation for why there's no females. Okay. And these guys have, I guess, not been there forever. They've only been there for a couple years, and I mean, we're not talking about a generational.
But it's hundreds. It's hundreds of guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, hundreds and hundreds of men.
Based on how many Laura kills, there have
20. Between the ages of 20 and 40, just hundreds of guys have gone missing on this island.
And a third of them are voiced by the guy who did Cyborg from Teen Titans.
Yes. The suspension of disbelief it takes to believe that there are infinite henchmen?
Yeah.
It turns out there's way more suspension of disbelief that all of these people were shipwrecked sailors and pilots. It turns out that is less believable than an infinite goon factory.
The power of infinite ninjas.
Oh, the power of infinite ninjas. So... let's get back. Now that we've got that off our chest, I feel so much better. I feel
a weight has been lifted. Really.
Yeah, and I feel like now we can discuss adventuring and exploring and scrap and weapons.
Okay, so You guys make fun of me a bunch for there being just standard, right? For being the grind father.
Yes.
I did 100% this game.
That's
with only one playthrough.
You said it. We can just point that out.
Well, I said it before the break, and I'll say it once after the break. So
right.
I
let the people know.
I got everything, and I thought that it was well made and well done. Right?
Yes. This game is good.
The game or your achievements?
Both.
Okay.
Both. And here's why, right? So there is a certain group of gamers that enjoy the grind. They're called completionists. We get genuine enjoyment from saying, hey, there's a list of like 50 things you gotta find throughout this game. Find them all. You get a treat at the end, right? And we did.
And it's literally like a treat, like a dog treat. It's not a lot.
Like we do get a treat at the end, right?
Now here's a question for you.
Yes.
So you were always going to get all of the posters and light all the torches and stuff.
From the purchase of the game, I knew.
So when you were taking on these soldiers, so in this game there are no optional encounters, there are no enemies beyond the story beats. So the game is designed for you to have none of them, none of the upgrades outside of the beaten path. You can totally beat it with the base bow and arrow, unupgraded shotgun, unupgraded machine gun.
Yeah.
So this is just a design sort of critique. Would you have preferred there be some sort of optional combat or boss encounter or something that accommodates someone who has gone above and beyond? Because taking on those enemies with just the base bow was so simple that I can't imagine what it would be like if you had a grenade bow.
Yeah. Actually, a pretty good example of this was Kingdom Hearts. This is one of the things that I think Kingdom Hearts did right, which was there were optional bosses in Kingdom Hearts. And if you wanted to beat those optional bosses, you had to beat one stacked. Like your squad had to be deep and stacked. Like you had to have like maxed out all their abilities and like perfectly selected them all and built them up, given them stat items appropriately, because if your guys died, you were gonna be killed solo. Like you could have played a Kingdom Hearts game from the beginning and messed up for your fight against Sephiroth in Olympic Coliseum. Like it would be really hard.
And I think JRPGs do this very well with side quests, like the weapons.
Final Fantasy VII, weapons, right?
A lot of the optional bosses in Chrono Trigger. What'd you say?
Blue Dragon, the JRPG, they did a great job with it.
Yeah, same thing with Lost Odyssey. A lot of role-playing games, even Dragon Age, will have these optional side quests that are way, 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 way above and beyond the main. Usually the hardest enemy in a role-playing game will not be the final boss.
Right, it'll be some optional boss. Now, you're asking me a specific question. I'll give you a specific answer. Yes, I wish there was some reason for me to have these weapons. The best place they could have done it is in the optional tombs. I wish that it wasn't just a puzzle. I wish it was a puzzle that took me to a final chamber, and then I had to kill something big and scary, and then I get my reward. I would have changed that. But let me preemptively answer a new question that you were probably going to ask. Like you'd say, hey, Billy, you know all that shit that was worth nothing, like GPS caches? Like, why would you do that? Why?
I know why, so I wasn't even going to ask that question.
Oh yeah, you know why.
I was going to ask whys and why Billy? Like just a forlorn expression. I didn't really want an answer.
We've already taken a moment for Billy's silence, a moment of silence for his well-being.
Yeah, there was that. I wish that there was some reason for there to be upgraded weapons this way, or like I said earlier, just don't make the weapons so good. Like, you could have made the weapons kind of bad or worse in the beginning of the game. I think I would have liked that if the weapons were just all straight up worse in the beginning of the game. And the weapons that you got at the very start, like when you first get the weapons, that should have been mid-tier weapons, right? It should have been a busted ass shotgun that sometimes dealt damage to you because it was just shrapnel would just come off of it. Like that should have been the first shotgun.
The shotgun is somehow made of duct tape and dreams.
Yeah, that should have been shotgun level 1. Not like a pump action trusty old piece of machinery. No, they should have had a busted piece of shit for the first shotgun.
Yeah, and I guess when I was doing some of the item collecting, like I would stumble upon the first of each checklist, and once the thing flashed up and said 15 more to go, I was like, nope.
Fail.
Nope.
All right.
And when they presented it as a checklist, that was the moment I was like, oh, so you want me to scour this location for these things? And it's not even scour that hard. Usually it's just around a corner.
I didn't have to scour that hard. So this is why I think this was done pretty well. I did complete all those bullshit checklists, and I had a good time doing it. Because besides the big reward at the end, I got cool little rewards along the way. Like 9 times out of 10, you said it, like if you're going to look for a GPS cache, you don't have to look very hard. Just look around the environment and where you might be able to also reach. Like hey, I see like a ledge up there. The story doesn't tell me to go there, but I bet I can get to it. 9 times out of 10, there's some kind of collectible there or some kind of goodie.
Yeah.
You can get there. There were 3 like 2.5 of the checklists that were hard, that were like actually like badly placed. And I can list them actually. It was one of the mushrooms in the Red Cap collection mission, and it was one of the banners in like the There Were Others or whatever, or like the people before. It was like there was like 1 out of 4 banners that was in one of those like huge like cannon silos on the side of a cliff.
Oh, great.
And there, one of each of those was actually placed pretty badly, and it was not intuitive for a collector. One of those banners was up on a crane, like a crane, and you had to have like the upgraded rifle zoom in scope to see it, but you couldn't shoot it with that. You had to shoot it with a fire arrow. And if you used a fire arrow to shoot it, you really couldn't see it. So you had to just kind of like throw like 8 of them at this crane until one of them hit.
Yeah, that sounds like really good game design.
Me even knowing that it was there, I had to scour the entire like zone probably 2 or 3 times. And I have pretty damn good instinct. I was like, there's got to be something around this crane. It looks.
You've played a video game.
It looks too like intentional for it to be here.
This is a very conspicuous mess.
Yeah, it was a very conspicuous structure. I looked at it 2 or 3 times, didn't see the flag, and then on like the 3rd time I looked at it, I was like, oh shit, it's right there. I missed it. The first 2 times I looked at it.
Look this crane up and down with his sniper rifle.
Yeah, I had to.
Yeah. The thing that I think is pretty cool is that so you do get unlockable like experience stuff, and Laura gets better at tracking, and I think it's nice that one of the tracks is tracking.
Yeah.
And you will get better at like
finding
the collectibles, literally just unlocking things on the map, and eventually if you go into survival instincts, like collectibles will glow because when you need to survive, you need to find
they'll
posters.
glow through walls.
Yeah, nothing says survival.
Does.
Like finding GPS caches and posters
Diary
and
entries.
And that's the other thing. Like if you wanted to go get all these collectibles, they give you a way to basically do that. A story makes sense kind of way for them to give you an upgrade that makes collectible hunting easy.
Though I did find the fact that that was cool. I thought that having a track that helps the person who's going to be obsessive about collecting do that more efficiently, I thought that was a very cool decision. However, the track where she starts getting like stealth kills and better kills, not better because
I didn't really like that so much.
It wasn't even her when she gets into combat. Once you unlock melee attacks,
one of them is stealth kills.
Yeah,
one of them gave you bonus points for stealth melee kills.
Yeah, but it is not the ability to do stealth melee kills. It is bonus points because instead of choking someone out or like shooting them,
way more believable for a stealth kill.
Yes, she like takes a pickaxe and buries it in the back of their fucking skull.
That's the silent stealth kill.
Like suddenly becomes manhunt all of a sudden.
Oh my god!
And all of a sudden it flashes like 15 points, brutal stealth kill! Exclamation point!
Brutality.
And I'm like, what is this game?
In the description for the one you get for the rifle, it's like, watch as Laura brutally unloads half a mag into the chest of her enemies, like for bonus points. I'm like, that's not believable.
she's supposed to feel remorse, and the thing I unlock at the top of this is her not to feel remorse and to stylishly execute dudes.
The one for the shotgun is like she puts it up against their chin and blows their fucking head off. Like that's the one for the shotgun.
I was looking at it and I was just thinking, I'm like, okay, so these are the top tiers, so she's gonna get new abilities, right? Like up until now, she's been getting better aim with the bow, or she's been able to like save bullets. So does this mean that when she has the rifle equipped, maybe she'll get a melee finisher? Like, she wasn't able to do this before, but now she figured out how to melee someone with a shotgun. No, it's like instead of using the pickaxe to whack their skull in, she takes out the shotgun and blows their head off. And I'm like, what the... Laura... The other things were Survivor. This is not.
You should just have
the one for the pistol is like you jab an arrow into their knee, and while they're like taking a knee, you just like put the pistol up to the back of their head execution style and just blow their head out like that. And I'm like, that's the pistol one.
These are the tonal shifts. This is the Ludo and the narrative not matching. This is the moment where it's like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm in this place. What's going to happen? I gotta eat. Pickaxe to the skull. Brutal pickaxe kill.
Bonus
15 points.
Think about nightmares.
And it's the thing where, like, she gets more experience from executing someone with a shotgun to the face than she does from just killing them to survive. Somehow she's learning more about being a survivor the more debased her kills are. And that's just, it's a real fucked up message.
Now, let me be the person that always defends the game. And I really can't defend that particular instance, but let me just run back to there being moments that the game nods towards and says, hey, look, we understand we're making an action game where there's going to be a lot of gunfighting, a lot of killing. Let's have a moment where we make like a believable scenario. I forget the exact level it was, but it's right where you have to like throw a lantern through a room full of gas and like blow a dude up. Yeah. You go walk up to that guy and he's like, finish me. Just finish me off. And if you do shoot him or kill him, then there's one line of dialogue where all she says was, go to hell. Right? That's it. Or you could not murder that guy and just go about your mission, and he will just be dead when you come back. Right? I liked that. That was critical for me. That was very good. I liked that. Where they had an opportunity to do that again and they failed was when you went to the Solari camp and you went into those that dungeon of cages where they had like men in cages, like being like starvation conditioned to believe the cult or whatever. You can kill everybody in those crates. You can just go around and just murder every one of them, and they pose no threat to you at all.
Billy had to try it.
Yeah, I did it.
Okay.
I bodied every single one of them. And if you leave the area and come back, they respawn, so you can do it again if you want.
Thanks, video games.
That I did not like, because they pose zero threat at all. They're these like emaciated men in cages. They pose no threat to you.
And that's the kind of thing where actually, Grim, when he's supporting you for like 2 seconds, so you can see Grim for a minute before he sacrifices himself nobly. And I tried to aim a sniper rifle at him just to see what would happen, and the game made her lower her scope, and I couldn't shoot. It took control away from me. I'm like, oh, that's smart. They prevented someone from ruining the narrative by busting shots at Grim. A lot of games do that, like when you train a sight on a character whose story important.
Instead of it being like a red crosshair, it's like a green crosshair. You can't pull the trigger or something like that. Yeah.
They had that's the thing that bothers me. Then they had the tech to do it. They built that mechanic already, and they just didn't employ it.
From an actual development, like coding the game, like they had a way to do that.
They did the work already.
Yeah.
They just needed to apply it to a different character.
Copy and paste it to something else.
That's done. But okay, that's pretty fucked up that you can just shoot people in cages. Or there were also dogs in cages. I didn't shoot them. I guess you did.
No. I mean, I didn't shoot the
dogs.
I just assumed that you could have shot those because you could shoot the people in cages. I just assumed.
If you could shoot the people, the wolves probably.
So
Yeah, that was a big bummer for
Yeah.
me. It was just like, why is this? I understand why the violence is ramping up from a gameplay. Like, the moments where she has the grenade launcher finally, and she's like, come and get it! Ah! And she becomes the action hero the game wanted her to be the whole time.
Yeah, she starts dual wielding.
That was a big moment where I'm like, okay, so she's just an action hero.
Here's
now,
how
right?
I wish they could have done upgrade systems. I wish they could have done, like, okay, this might be not quite the same kind of analogy, but think about a God of War game, right? I actually really enjoyed those games, like the first God of War. You have these sweet, like, blades on chains attached to your wrists, and you can swing them around and stuff. And the way you upgrade is you just get better moves to do with the same weapons. Right now, this kind of doesn't parallel perfectly because God of War is just like a slaughterhouse game, and that's the whole appeal to it, right?
Welcome to the slaughterhouse.
Yeah, but you have they're called Blades of Chaos, I think, in God of War. It's the same weapon, but you just get better moves with them. Like, you get like more stylish finishers and stuff. They should have done that. It should have been. Like,
she does unlock more stylish finishers. The problem is
they're just
completely tonally
they're
dissonant.
just more brutal and violent. I would have preferred
executions.
I would have preferred her done she to do something like, okay, look, I have a bow and arrow. Let me like do something where I can like stab a guy in the leg with an arrow and then pull it in the bow to like shoot another guy. Like, make it like a QTE combo event or something like that. That would have been sweet. And it wouldn't have made them have to like upgrade the bow to ridiculous grenade launcher bow status. That's just dumb and not believable. But getting more skilled with bow and arrow fighting is believable.
And that's the thing. They do have that. Like, you unlock the ability to jab a bow in a dude's knee. You unlock the ability for her to find arrows on a person's person after you make them dead. But at a certain point, they run out of combat skills.
And they just have to get more explosions.
Grenades.
More explosions.
Not just grenades. Like, I was honestly surprised. Like, the last tier of execution kill wasn't like, take a grenade and shove it down a dude's throat. 20 points. Oh, no. Boom, and his chest blows out.
He like runs into a crowd of people and they all kill each other. There is a cool little perk for if you shoot a guy who is about to throw up like a
Molotov,
like a rocket at you, or throw like a piece of dynamite at you. If it blows up like two guys around him, you get like an achievement for it. It's called like hot potato or something. Achievement.
Yes.
You know.
Anyway, okay, I want to transition to another thing that I wanted to talk about in this game. There's, I guess, like two more points that I want to talk about. One is this, and one is sort of wrapping up the reboot theme here. Because this is why I wanted to play this game, was so like I wanted to see what a reboot was. That I think this is a very well done reboot. So I want to get back to that before we finish up. But the last thing that I wanted to talk about was difficulty of the game. Not just how hard it was when you put in the disc immediately, but options to like you want to play on easy mode, normal mode, or hard mode, right? I want the game developers to take more consideration into what easy mode means, to what normal mode means, to what hard mode means. For me, easy mode needs to be like, you are a new video game player. We're going to give you more tips. Like, things are going to just be sort of easier for you. Yes, they're going to be more ammo because you're probably bad at shooting things because you probably don't know how to use the controller very well. Like, that's where I want easy mode to be, right? And games need that. Games like this need that, right?
Sure.
I like there to be a expert or insane or nightmare mode when it's appropriate for a game that has some decent replay value. Valda's Story, for example, has like God Slayer difficulty, and it's extremely hard. I've played it. It's a nightmare difficulty.
How many times did you 100% it? I've
only 100% of Valda's Story on 2 characters. Yeah, so I have some more work to do, but this game did easy, normal, and hard mode badly. Because I'll tell you everything that they changed. I can list it on there's 3 things. Easy, normal, hard mode. Here's what they change. Like how much health you have how much health your opponents have and like how much damage the bad guys do. Like that's the only thing that scales. The exact same amount of ammunition is all over the ground. I mean, this game is insane with how amount of the ammunition pickups. I mean, you guys play this game too. Like everywhere you went, there was like boxes of ammo all over.
Everywhere.
It was like littering the island.
Welcome to Gun Island.
Yeah,
I
this
think it was
just like
made of bullets.
like no amount of aircraft or ships could have brought this much ammunition onto an island. No way.
No, ancient Japan, everyone knows about the gun factories in ancient Japan in the feudal era.
And they took out all the tools
right?
on the ships and just replaced.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they took out all of the screwdrivers and wrenches, took them out, melted them down, and made bullets and grenades.
You know what games did this properly? Resident Evil games. You actually cared about how many bullets you had in your gun, because if you went up against a bad guy, like a mini boss or something, and you didn't have the 8 shotgun shells you needed to kill it, you were gonna lose. You might have to restart your game if you don't have enough bullets to kill like one of the bosses. Like if you're bad at a shooting game like that, you could just be screwed.
No, Lara's a survivor.
Early Splinter Cell was like that too.
I loved the Splinter Cell games.
Yeah.
And I think this is where games like The Last of Us, where there's some sort of false sense of scarcity. The Last of Us, you don't actually have problems with ammo, but they try to make you think you do by having you scavenge around.
Yeah.
That game tried to imply a sense of scarcity, that you were a survivor, by having you go through the motions of scrounging to find ammo, even though there was ammo everywhere. But in Tomb Raider, you don't even have to go through the motions of trying to find it.
You trip over like boxes full of grenades.
Literally boxes full.
Boxes full of grenades. Like, you could just grenade every enemy you see at a certain point in the game. I mean, I'm talking just fire off shots into the air for no reason. You never run out of bullets.
King Kong ain't got nothing on me.
Just like shooting at it, whatever.
Yeah, it does get a bit absurd. And if that's all that changes between normal, medium, and hard,
you might as well not have it in the game.
Well, I don't know about not having it. Like, you need that buffer, but I think like you said, your definition is off. The way that people need to be taught isn't by just dialing down the amount of damage enemies do. It's also by showing them how to aim, and maybe
it's how you play.
Maybe like having, instead of the rock faces, going from like you can't climb to now climb this entire section. Maybe have a smaller tutorial area or some sort of easier, simpler way to ramp people up.
Now, I would have, like, if I was building easy mode, normal mode, and hard mode in this game, I would have, so like a lot of times when they have different difficulties, some of the developers will justify it by saying, look, easy modes for beginners, we get that. Normal modes for your casual game player who just wants to play the game for the story, but they have plenty of experience to get through all the things that we're going to ask them to do. Hard mode is how we think the story actually plays out. That's how hard the scenario really should be, and how many bad guys there actually are, and how good they are compared to you, right? Mm-hmm. I wish if I turned the game on hard mode, I have to create a whole new save file or something, not just turn it on or off in the options select anytime during the game, right? I want hard mode to be, you are outclassed by a greater degree from earlier on, and you stay behind the curve, because that's how you should be in a game like this.
Especially if the crux of it is you're a survivor and this is a difficult situation.
I want you to be behind the curve and stay there, because in my opinion, like, that's where this game story should be in the first place. That's what hard mode should be. Hard mode should be what like the true story is, and like normal or easy mode should be like for the casual game player who doesn't like who's just like there for the narrative.
And I think now I have to believe that this game was focus tested to heck, because this is a AAA production.
This is a AAA, and it was polished to hell.
Yeah, it was really, really smooth. Like, there were no moments where
beautiful,
I thought
really good looking,
beautiful. Gorgeous to look at, fun to play.
Yeah, and so it was really streamlined. There were no moments, even where the controls, I didn't feel like I was fighting with the game at any point.
Just smooth all around.
So I have to believe that this is what they came to based on testing. But I do wonder if they maybe didn't think outside of the box in how the tutorial could be implemented.
Did any of you guys
what
see
those modes could mean?
Did any of you guys see in the credits, like the first thing that they said was, "Thank you for playing. We worked our asses off to bring you the best game we possibly could." Like the developer said it in the beginning of the credits.
Sure, they did.
Yeah.
They were like, "We worked our asses off to bring you the best game possible. Thank you for playing."
Do you think part of this problem, and this might be anticipating some of what you might say in the reboot section, Billy, but do you think part of this is they're trying to make too big of a leap in a single game? Like they're trying to go from Lara just starting off, like fresh out of grad school, to
maybe
fully formed Lara Croft by the end, dual wielding pistols, launching grenades, all that.
And
now that you mention it, dual wielding pistols is an important thing that I want to discuss. Let me go ahead and wrap up the reboot stuff, and then I'll let you guys
here's how you
jump into Pete's points that he wants to make too. This won't take long for the reboot stuff. When I think about rebooting a game, I think about a couple of things. One, you have to stay true to the origins of this series, and I think that they did stay true to Tomb Raider here. This definitely is a Tomb Raider game. Yeah. It plays the way a Tomb Raider.
You raid tombs.
You do raid tombs. You raid tombs. There's like 8 or 10 tombs that you raid. It's like bonus side quest content stuff. There were elements of the game that played just like standard Tomb Raider games. Lots of platforming, lots of climbing and exploring things, solving puzzles in areas that you're in. And there are gunfights that, they feel like this mix between like Uncharted and kind of like a Gears of War run to cover kind of gameplay. That's fine, because I think that would have occurred in a Tomb Raider game 12 years ago if they had that technology and the development to do that. But there's other ways that they really stayed true to the series, which was, we had this arsenal of weapons, but we never see Lara Croft in her signature form, which is dual wielding 2 pistols towards her, single enemy or something like that, because in the other Tomb Raider games, you don't actually get like crowds and crowds and crowds of people. It's not like a mob versus one person all the time. It's usually like,
she's killing us.
It's usually just like, a couple of enemies, like 1 or 2 zombies in a room, or like 3 or 4 zombies in a room, and you just gun them down because they're zombies, right? No one cares.
She's a girl killer.
This game pays homage to that style of Lara at the very end of the game, when you act, for anyone who may not want to be spoiled by all the endings of this game, in one of the last
podcast,
in one of the last cinematics, you do get to dual wield pistols, and it actually changes the control scheme, like of the controller setup, that it never happens anywhere else in the game, that you have a control setup like this for combat. It has to give you a little like you need to be pushing these buttons because now you're dual wielding pistols like the real Lara Croft, and it's great. They paid homage to what Lara Croft was 15 years ago by doing that.
When she shot that defenseless
also guy. The music in the game is sort of like remixed music from the original series. In the select a new game menu for Tomb Raider, like 1, 2, 3, like the early Tomb Raider games, they play this little like tune, and it's played in some of the ambient forest scenes of this reboot Tomb Raider. Also, throwing back to the original games. If you collect all the GPS caches, which of course I did, they play the little jingle that is like a iconic Tomb Raider jingle for when she finds like treasure or finds something. And that's good. They need to do that stuff. They need to have those nods to the true old school fans, and they did that here. So good on them for doing it. Here's what they did new, right? You can't just have a reboot and call it a reboot and just resell them the exact same game, right? That's not a reboot. You have to redesign something. They redesigned Lara's character, making her, all right, I'm going to throw out
physically possible.
Yeah. Physically possible, but 2, like, it's a more believable person. Now, we had some critiques earlier, but yeah, she's like, she's so easily able to kill people and she's immediately competent at all these survival skills. All right, but fine. But at least it's not absurdly unreasonable. Like, they did a better job of creating a realistic character than they did before.
Sure.
Yeah.
They've updated the gameplay to a new style of gameplay, which is going to reach the fans. They're still going to have fun, but it's still going to be a Tomb Raider game. And it's the most recent updated version of a game like this, which is, the kind of like Uncharted kind of...
It's the most recent until this week, I think, when the new version of Tomb Raider came out. Rise of the Tomb Raider.
Yeah, that did get released this week or next week?
It came out. It's out.
Yeah. So
until that happened.
Anyway, so I think that it was done very well. There's not that many reboots that actually were like slam hits. Like rebooting a game was kind of hard. DMC did pretty well, but I think it had some problems. I think
the Devil May Cry.
Which one?
Devil May it's called DMC. It's like a reboot of the whole Devil May Cry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people will call Metroid Prime a reboot of the Metroid series because even though it didn't restart anything, they took the game in a very different direction.
They did, but those people are wrong.
Well, Metroid Prime is still an excellent example of completely changing how a game is played.
Yeah, but that's not...
Yeah, you're right. It's not a true reboot. It's not. It's not a true reboot. But it does redesign a game from the ground up and make it work, meeting and exceeding the expectations of its audience.
Yep. So, Pete.
Yes.
What did you want to bring up?
Well, I have a minor point, and whatever. So let me start with you guys, all right? Because I'm
great.
Field.
We're the only people here,
right?
So
I'm just gonna turn around, open it to the room. What do you guys think of the depiction of sort of Japan and Japanese culture within the game? Minor depiction, but relevant nonetheless.
I liked that the Japanese zombies spoke Japanese.
Good start.
That was pretty good. I thought that the mysticism in games like this, so Uncharted is my frame of reference.
Right.
They usually take some sort of foreign culture, meaning foreign as in not American or English, and use that as a source of mystical nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that context, the idea of ancient Japan being the source of mystical nonsense for this game seemed in line with adventure game, like not adventure game, action adventure kind of Indiana Jones clones.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that they treated like the art was in a ancient Japanese style. The ruins I thought were pretty spectacular. I think that the architecture was pretty true to form. The armor was pretty true to form.
P.S. The level design in this game was crazy good.
It was very
good.
The
architecture, oh my god, this level design was fucking great.
I love the windswept temple and then the snow temple. I thought both of those looked really nice.
The village with like all the buildings on the sides of the cliff was amazing.
Yeah, so I think that from an architectural standpoint, I think they nailed the look that they were going for. But if you're talking about how the mysticism ascribed to Japanese culture, or this particular Japanese culture was handled, I think that it's yet another example of taking some sort of kernel of a forgotten legend and just saying, yo, that's real.
Yeah.
And that culture is almost always from the Far East or the Middle East.
Yeah, that's really the point I wanted to raise, right? And I'm glad you sort of pointed out what they did well. Because in terms of examples of this Tomb Raider's hardly the most garish or the most reprehensible. But there's sort of, using literary criticism, there's a theory. Orientalism. It was first made sort of prominent by Edward Said, if anybody wants to look it up. But it's the idea that sort of the Orient as a place never existed. It was never a real thing. Just sort of imperialist powers, English imperialist powers, made it up to create a certain narrative.
It's as real as Neverland or like Wonderland?
Yeah, kind of. And
I really don't know. Like, I don't really understand the...
It's like the idea
kind of asking.
It's the idea that we've created a certain vision of, the Middle East, the Far East, that just sort of promotes stereotypes, sort of positive or beneficial to the, what's the word I want? Hegemonic tendencies, let's say.
Well, I'll be honest. Like, I would guess myself to be like the stereotypical culprit behind this, this theory. Like, I am not very knowledgeable in history. It's like a topic that I did not study in depth at all. History or anthropology or like world culture, I didn't study it very much in any of my academics. I studied other things. So if you told me there was actually some like
Zombie
island
samurai.
of Yamatai or something, and that was actually real, I'd be like, oh, really cool. Like
oh, the Storm Queen.
There was actually a
traditional Japanese
Storm
Queen.
I wouldn't fucking know. So they could tell me anything, and I would have no reason to doubt it because I just am not informed at all. So I think I'm one of the people responsible for this shit getting perpetuated.
Yeah, I think Tomb Raider tried their best, with some of that stuff you were pointing towards, But I think in an adventure game, and especially in a Tomb Raider game, you need a source of mystical bullshit, and it's all too easy to say, Far East, ancient Japan.
Yeah. Like the Uncharted games go for one's a South American mystical bullshit.
Yeah.
Then there's then there's a Far East, and then there's Middle Eastern, and it's always a foreign country.
Yeah.
Foreign always meaning not European and not American or not North American. So I didn't even think it needed to necessarily go to mystical stuff, but it did, and I guess it's kind of odd that they called the zombie samurai the Oni, which means demon in Japanese,
Sure.
Considering none of the people who were stranded on the island seem to be Japanese. And I'm not sure why they knew that. Like, maybe it's just cultural, like the cultural cachet of, okay, they're Japanese, and maybe Oni's a familiar enough word that they would have known it. Like, did you know that was what Oni meant?
I knew Oni was like a Japanese word for something like that.
Demon, right?
Yeah, it means demon.
Yeah.
I only know that from Street Fighter.
Yes.
Because there's a character named Oni, and he's just...
I think I know it from the Venture Brothers.
No, doesn't Akuma mean demon?
There are multiple words.
Or Akuma means devil, and Oni means demon spirit or something like that? Whatever.
There are subtle differences between Akuma and Oni, but...
Akuma literally means, like, demon. He's the bad guy of the game. His name is Akuma.
I'm not going to... I'd have to look up the differences.
His name is Demon.
They both are not great words.
Akuma's not like, yeah, he's a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
Now, okay, Pete, you raise a good point, right? This is yeah, I mean, I expect nothing less. I will say, though, that in the first Tomb Raider game, like the 96 or 95, whatever, I can't remember exactly when it came out. It was mid-90s. When the first Tomb Raider game came out, if I'm recalling correctly, the whole mysticism shit happened in New Mexico, like in America. But now, hang on a second. I'm pretty sure it was like an Area 51, kind of like there was a nuclear test site, and it like unearthed some kind of like it dug up some kind of like ancient alien demon lady or something. All right, sure, whatever.
Video games in the 90s.
It was an American mystical bullshit.
I was going to be my next question.
She did go to other countries in the game, but Tomb Raider has in its history not always done foreign country mystical bullshit.
I guess not always is probably
not always is the right term.
Yeah, that's all you can hope for with video adventure game like mystical bullshit. Yeah, and all you can hope for is that, and that when they unleash the mysticism, it's not like a horribly offensive caricature. Like, let's see, in Uncharted, one game ends with zombies, one game ends with blue people, and one game ends with demon Ifrit men. And so this game ends with zombie samurai.
Yeah, it's just par for the course, really, I guess.
Yeah, and the zombie samurai, it was kind of anticlimactic because
the first Tomb Raider game had dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Like T-Rexes.
Turok?
No, not Turok.
Oh, Turok.
Different game, different quality of product. But Like, they built up the Oni so much. They built up the Demon Samurai so
You
much.
really
I was
didn't
like,
even
oh,
fight
now
any
it's
of
going to
them.
be. But when you
fought like
do,
one.
you wreck them. It turns out they
You
died of
grenade
bullets
at
just
them,
like
bro.
regular people. The henchmen were like, oh, the Oni came from nowhere. They were so strong. And I was like, okay, so they take a headshot too. Wait, they died of bullets too? I thought that it was going to be like I'd need a special weapon, or like I'd have to bless my
Some
gun
special
with
magic,
holy
like silver
water
bullet or something.
or something.
You're going.
I'd have to have some sort of power that would allow me to defeat this powerful ancient evil. And you know what the power was?
Bullets.
Bullets to the head. Lead to head. Apply lead to head.
Works, man.
That's the
It
power.
works.
And actually, you don't even need to shoot them in the head. You can just shoot them in the chest over and over and over again. It turns out they die just like regular people do. And that was kind of
If
anticlimactic.
it bleeds, we can kill it.
I don't even know if they bled, but we certainly could kill it. At a certain point, like big Russian dude who you had to box took more blows than ancient zombie Japanese samurai. So, yeah, I think the Orientalism point is not off base.
Yeah.
I just think that these games tend to go to that well and draw from it pretty deep.
That's true.
Yeah, I did appreciate that in Tomb Raider, the paint was white to distinguish where you could crawl. In Uncharted, it's yellow. So, you know how when you're like climbing and you're looking for a place to jump, it's white paint every time? In Uncharted, it's yellow paint. So, inspiration on its sleeve.
Yeah, right.
So, I think that's probably it for us in Tomb Raider, right? Any other last points?
I can't think of anything else right now, although, I mean, I guess the whole reason why I wanted to talk about this game was because I wanted to examine what a good reboot is. I think this is a good reboot. What do you guys think?
I agree. I think it does what it sets out to do. I just wish that my story... I really love dense games and games that are narratively cohesive, and I like when the gameplay and the story intermingle in a meaningful way, and this game does not have that. It is a AAA action-adventure, kind of, there's some platforming elements, and then there's this story that just doesn't. The two parts feel like they could be on different games, and I wouldn't know the difference.
No.
And that's upsetting. But I think that the game plays really well. The gunplay is very good. The upgrade system is fun, if not necessarily essential. The climbing is good. I enjoyed finding some of the weird collectibles, even if I didn't want to collect all of them. Like, hey, this is a poster. That's kind of a funny thing. Or like when I shot a lantern and that was a collectible, I was like, oh, shooting lanterns. That's fun. It's fun that this thing that I did just on a lark was a thing that you accounted for. That's kind of cool. What do you think, Pete?
Yeah, I thought, I have pretty much a lot of the same stuff to say as you, Gino. Very good game, very polished game, right? They obviously put the time in. But it was a game that didn't really know exactly what it wanted to be, right? Are we just talking survival here? Are we talking one-man army, one-woman army, I guess I should say?
What if it was both?
It can't, It's just too disparate of a focus to try to combine sort of one game.
Yeah, and I feel like I want to just say this explicitly. I don't think that the writer was unskilled.
No.
I don't think that the person who is envisioning this story is flawed and is deeply flawed. Like, there are some movies where you're like, this director or this writer does not know what they're doing. This is not the case. I think that it is the realities of AAA development. It is the realities of how a writer needs to write when you're writing from set piece to set piece instead of starting from a blank slate. Like, if the starting point is we're going to have a scene where Lara climbs this giant wreck of a ship, you need to come up with a reason to get Lara to that ship, and it has to just work. And so sometimes you send a character to the ship to get a screwdriver and a wrench, not because that was your ideal vision, but because they wanted to have that sequence on the ship.
There are too many disparate things to account for, ultimately, to make it cohesive.
Yeah, so if you need to have a story that somehow gets you from a sunken ship to a burning temple to a magma cavern, you need... something's going to get lost because you're trying to do so much from a gameplay perspective that the story's just going to have to take a hit here and there. And I'm the type of person that gets really bothered when the story has to take a hit over and over and over again like that.
I am looking forward to what the sequel is going to have, because we brought up some criticisms, and this game did well. Like it had good sales and everything. Like it was a perfectly fine installment. It was a successful game. I'm excited to play the sequel and say, like, are any of the problems that we just talked about here, are any of them fixed? Right? Pete had an issue, or not an issue, but Pete made the point, like, maybe they just had to make huge leaps here so that we could get to the real Lara Croft in this game. Maybe this game had to put in so much work, and they had to kind of sloppily go from, oh, it's baby Lara, she doesn't know what she's doing, to a survivor is born, which is like the ending, like
that was
like catchphrase of the game. A survivor is born. You know, they have to get from 0 to 100 real quick. They do it in one game, not 3 games. Good.
Yeah, that would have been pretty great if just a survivor was born and then they just played that Drake song.
0 to 100.
Real quick.
Great.
I got nothing. What's the game next time?
Yeah, what we got?
Okay. Yeah, so next time, we actually have a guest who's going to be joining us, and he requested that we play Until Dawn for the PS4. So we are going to go have a teen horror week, I guess.
I'm terrified of teens. I think they're scary.
Billy loves horror movies. He loves them. Can't get enough.
Fuck.
He knows they're... What?
Fuck this game.
You're going to love it. Everyone's going to love it. So I've actually already played it in preparation.
I played enough of it to know that I don't like it.
Well, we'll see.
That's a great selling point for the podcast.
I've beaten it, and I do like it.
I have some mad shit talking to do at this game. So if you want to hear some mad shit talking,
we'll get to
tune in for the next podcast.
Yeah, so we're gonna have probably a 4-person pod, 3 to 4 people. Also, we have some additional bonus podcasts that are still on the way.
Yeah.
Hopefully one of them will go up very shortly, and then a second one will follow. Depends on the timeline, because that one was long.
As the editor, that one is like over 3 hours long. What were you doing?
Final Fantasy VIII is a long game that is worthy of very long discussion.
All right,
I'm
not going to attack your Boo Bear Final Fantasy VIII.
Everyone loves Roman numerals and Psychonauts. All right, whatever.
Everyone loves them.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we done?
That's on the way.
Can we get out of here?
If you want to get in contact with the podcast, once again, at thatpinguino on Twitter, thatpinguino@gmail.com, or leave a comment on deeplistens.libsyn.com.
Look at how smooth you made it this time.
Yeah, way better than 2 hours ago.
Buttery. And so, if you like the podcast, iTunes, blah, 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 you know the spiel.
You heard it.
Thank you for listening once again. Billy.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I had a fun time playing this game, had a fun time talking about it, and I'm definitely going to play the sequel because I look forward to this new reboot Lara Croft.
Pete.
Much love to all our fans out there. It's always nice to dig deep in your ears every week. Yeah.
We have fans in Israel, apparently.
Israel, really? We are worldwide.
Yeah, we got people in Israel. We've got people in let's see. I think you would enjoy this. We have listeners in Norway.
Ooh, Norway.
In Kazakhstan.
Really?
In the Netherlands.
Who are these people?
Sweden.
Beloved fans.
We have a repeated listener, at least one in Sweden.
I love our global
got some Brazil.
Oh, a Swedish person?
Yeah. Ireland.
We love you guys.
We got Germany.
We'll cry the entire next podcast in Swedish.
You
Turkey,
should
Poland.
send in some comments.
All right.
Bobki.
Bobchi.
Bobchi.
Kristiki. All right.
All right. And so, till the next podcast, hope you don't have to wait until dawn.
Get out.
We're going to get out. Thank you for listening. Peace.